All right, guys. Well, this is actually take two. I recorded the whole video. Turns out my mic was broken, and now you're getting me well practiced. But sorry about last week having no video with the floods coming in. We ended up going out and doing relief efforts on Thursday and Friday, and there was just a ton going on. So what I'm going to do is this week I'm going to combine chapter 6 and 7 and try and squish them together and see if we can get something good. So that being said, we'll jump right in. All right, so we started out in chapter 6, and I actually preached this chapter last week in the All service, so I've got a pretty good handle on it, and I'm going to try and go off script with this one. A little crazy, I know, but we'll see where it goes. This is a continuation of kind of the wandering through the wilderness of the Israelites between Egypt and the Promised Land. And Moses is leading them, and they get close to the Promised Land, and God tells them, send some spies into Canaan to look at the land, if it's fertile, what the cities are like, what the people are like. And that way, they can come back and tell Israel, and you guys can be informed when you go and take the land that I promised to you. And God tells them, send the leaders from each tribe. So that'd be 12 spies, one from each tribe. And it's not just anybody, it's the leader of those tribes. So Moses does this. Moses does as God commands him, and he sends the spies in, and they're there for 40 days. And when they come back, they answer Moses' questions about, what the land is like, what the cities are like, what people are like. But they go into this just terrifying detail about how there are giants there. And the Israelites have no chance fighting against them, and there's no way they should move in. And they spread this throughout all of Israel. And everyone's afraid. Everyone's terrified. They're like, no, we can't go. And, who would blame them? If they were going up against someone they knew they were going to lose to, they're being reasonable, right? Wrong. They're not being reasonable. They were afraid. God told them, go in. I'm going to give you this land. It's going to be yours. Go in, and it is. But they're afraid. So they choose not to. They were lied to by Satan, who told them that they weren't good enough, who told them that they couldn't do it, who told them that everything else was too much, instead of listening to the truth that God had to tell them. That was true except for two of the spies. There were two spies, Caleb and Joshua. And Caleb and Joshua said, no, God said we would have this land, so we're going to have this land. We would be dumb not to go in. And the people were so mad at hearing this. The people were ready to stone them to death. And I think it's an amazing image of what the world is like now. When everyone else is listening to the lies that Satan is telling them, the voices for God are just looked at as threats. And that's what we should be looked at as, a threat. Because the people were too afraid to do it. Just like we're too afraid to march into a world that hates Christians. Jesus says that the world would hate us. And we're too afraid to walk into a world that hates us and be a voice for God because God told us to. Because God promises that this world will be ours. And so I want to encourage you not to let that fear get in your way. To be like Caleb and Joshua and stand up for God and say, no, God said this is the way things are going to be. This is the way things are going to be. Because you see, the people who were afraid, the people who didn't want to go in, God punished them. There were consequences for their actions. They had lost faith over and over again wandering through the wilderness. And God just couldn't take it anymore. He knew this was going to happen. He made a promise to Israel that land would be theirs. They lost faith in God and they lost faith in His promise, so they couldn't claim it anymore. They had no right to claim that promise. So He told them, none of you will enter the promised land, you will all die in the wilderness. And they had to wait for 40 years because no one from their generation was allowed in. But the next generation was. Everyone under the age of 20 was allowed in the promised land. They had to wait 40 years. There were 60 by the time they got in there. But they were allowed in. Because God keeps His promise. Even when we lose faith, God keeps His promise. That's the beauty of this chapter. That God will always remain faithful. And we should too. We shouldn't listen to the lies that the devil tells us, the lies that the world tells us. because God speaks truth. And that's the only truth that there is. So when you see something and you hear that voice in your head that says, you can't do this, you can't handle this is too much for you, just know that it's a lie. It's a lie from Satan, and you have no business remembering it, because God will be with you wherever you go. All right, so running through on our quick trip through chapter 6 and 7. Next, we got chapter 7, and I got to tell you, I love chapter 7. Chapter 7 is basically the entire book of Joshua, and if you've never read it, you need to. It's got everything. There are battles, there's a war, there's spies going between nations, there's a traitor within Israel. It's crazy. And so I really struggled, thinking, what am I going to talk about? There's so much in here. And then I realized after praying, it's not about what happens. It's not about the crazy cool events that could be in any movie that we find now. It's about what God is doing in this chapter. And it's about the character of God that is shown in this chapter. And there's no better example than in chapter 1. You see, at the end of Deuteronomy, Moses dies. Moses is passing away. And he tells Joshua, you're going to be the leader. You're going to lead these people. And Moses tells him to be strong and courageous. So what we see in chapter 1 is God commissioning Joshua. Moses already told him he's going to be the leader, but this is God telling him he's going to be the leader. And it's more than him telling him he's going to be the leader. It's God building him up and telling him all the great things he can do with God. That's the beauty of it. That God tells him all the great things he can do with God. So I'm going to read you guys one of my favorite sections from this. It's Joshua 1, 6 through 9. Be strong and courageous, for you shall cause this people to inherit the land that I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, being careful to do according to all the law that Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may have good success wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. I love that. When I read that, I feel like God is talking to me. That God is saying, Justin, you need to lead these people. Whoever it is, whether it's just somebody on the street who needs to be pointed towards God, whether it's the youth group on a Wednesday night, whether it's you guys through a screen. I'm called to lead someone somewhere, and so are you. There's someone in your life who needs to be led to God. And this is God telling us right here, be strong and courageous. Because every time he says that, he says it 3 times. And every time he does, he tells Joshua all the great things that will come from being strong and courageous. Now there's a catch, right? We're humans. We're not perfect. We're not strong. We're not courageous. We are weak, and we are afraid, and we are just so easily broken. And I take so much comfort in that last verse. In verse 9, Joshua 1:9, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. You see, it's not on us. Everybody throughout Scripture, all the leaders until Christ, failed. They did amazing things, don't get me wrong, but they all had their low points too. And we do too. These were broken. We're not strong, we're not courageous. But with God, who promises that He's going to go with us, we can be. Because He is perfectly strong, and He's perfectly courageous, and He has got our backs. And we put Him on like armor, and we are strong and courageous through Him. Joshua had a huge task ahead of him. but it wasn't just his burden to bear. God went with him. God made him strong. God made him courageous, and God won for Joshua. Take that this week. Let that just stick in your minds to go out and be strong and be courageous because God is with you. Alright guys, well that's our video for this week. Take 2 was pretty good, not gonna lie. I'm thinking even better than take 1. But that would make a nice blooper reel one day. I hope you guys have a great week. I hope that none of you are, too affected by the flood. If you've still got waters wherever you're at. I know midterms are coming up, so I will definitely be praying for you guys. And if you find yourself in town this week on fall break, then stop by on Sunday. We got our Kirkin of the Tartans service, and one service at 11 o'clock with a picnic after. And I am super pumped to hear the pipes and drums, so come by and say hey. Also, the Jamaica mission trip. Applications due on the 25th. I know some of you guys have asked me for them. We don't have a digital copy of them. We have like a bunch of separate documents that we just kind of like squished into one. I'm working on getting one document made, and as soon as I do, I'm sending it out to you guys. Don't worry. But if you've got like your parents in town who can come by and grab it and get it to you, that might be quicker. Just because everything is happening at once here right now. But I hope you guys have a great week. Read chapter 8 for next week, and I'll see you soon.